back in college. I got into photography and slowly just built into a fairly well-rounded digital marketer, I would say. And eventually that became my full-time gig. Hustlefish is not a side hustle for me. It is my day job now. So that's kind of the side of this conversation that I bring to the table. What does it look like to transition from side hustle to this is my full-time every day, this is what I do. So just a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself? You have to unmute yourself first.
There we go. Now you can hear me? Good. So my name is Emily Carter. I launched Change Agent in December of 2019. So I haven't been doing this full time for a whole long time, not as long as Tyler. And my business is really sort of like a consultant plus a coach plus like a freelance digital media producer all in one. So I help people with side hustles and small businesses by using the products and services that I've created to help people get a lot of clarity around what they're doing and where they're at in their business, and create some real actionable individualized solutions that kind of make all the hard work more enjoyable and more effective.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily, for joining us. And we have Mark Lowe.
Hi, I'm Mark Lowe. You probably know me from Greater Lafayette Commerce. I manage the business success platform for them. Pretty much my whole life is a side hustle, I think, because I am a contractor, just kind of accidentally, kind of like this Winnie the Pooh thing that just happened. Contractor for Greater Lafayette Commerce. And I also am a partner with my brothers in a pizzeria. We've had as many as 5 pizzerias and a deli since over the last 20 years. And we also have a game company where we design board games, and I teach psychology and business at Ivy Tech.
Got a lot on your plate, Mark. So thanks for joining us today. So we will jump right in and waste no time. So first, let's start at the basics. What is the difference between a hobby and a side hustle, Mark?
Well, number one, a side hustle should make money, right? Whereas a hobby probably does nothing but lose money because you're just continually buying or spending money. It used to be that years ago, or I guess a few years ago, you could actually take hobby expenses off on your taxes, but now, as of 2018, you cannot do that. So you have to make money 3 out of 5 years with a side hustle for it not to be considered a hobby with the government. So if you're not making any money with your side hustle and you've been doing it for 5 years, it's probably a hobby, and that's okay. Hobbies are fun too. So that's one of the things. And then another is maybe time commitment. So I was looking at I consider myself an extremely lazy person. And then until I was writing my hours down on what I spend on everything. And I think that maybe I'm just tired because I've got 10 hours a week in teaching, 10 hours a week in the games, 40 hours a week with my contract job, 10 hours a week with the pizzeria, 5 hours a week on new businesses, and about 5 hours a week in some of the investment properties that we own. So that's around 75 or 80 hours a week. So I guess I'm not lazy. I am tired, and I'm old.
Well, again, I can't underline enough. Thank you for joining us today and finding the time. Definitely, I think time and that the time is definitely one of the things that defines a hobby between a side hustle. Tyler or Emily, do you have other definitions of side hustles?
No, I think that's great. I think the only other thing I would add is just this idea of when to consider your hobby a side hustle and not. I think a lot of us are passionate about something and we enjoy doing something, and it's like, oh man, I wish I could make money at that. And sometimes that can spit up into like a legit side hustle where you're making money and you love it, and then maybe that's a career option for you. But a lot of times hobbies should just be hobbies, and it's okay for them just to be hobbies. I don't think you can judge the success or merit of a hobby by whether you make money. And we shouldn't do that, right? Hobbies are good for hobbies' sake. And it doesn't have to be like a metric whether or not you get paid to do your hobby. But I think that's something we a lot of times romanticize, of like, oh man, I love doing this. If only I could make money at it, I enjoy it. And that's my experience when I was in college and started photography. Photography was a hobby. And as soon as it became more than that, as soon as I started pursuing it as potentially a career, all of a sudden it started becoming less fun. And all of a sudden I didn't enjoy it as much. And it wasn't as like, I don't know, such a creative process for me and all that stuff. It just kind of became a job. And so again, like, I think it's important to know the difference between what is your hobby and what should be your side hustle, and vice versa, and be okay with what those things are. Like, you don't have to make your hobby into a side hustle.
I'd like to add something to that, unless Emily has something, but in psychology, there's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, right? So intrinsically motivated, those are things you're passionate about. It's fun, it's creative, it's something you like to do. Once you start receiving extrinsic rewards for those things, the intrinsic motivation dies out. So that's exactly what you're talking about there. Once you start getting paid for things that are fun to you, it's no longer fun, it's a job.
That's a very good point. Before we jump into our next section, I do want to remind everyone that we do have a Q&A function. So at any time, you guys are welcome to use that, upvote or comment on other people's questions as well, or drop us a line in the chat box. So after all of this, you know, you find something that's fun and you start getting paid for it, you start losing that intrinsic value. Why would someone want to continue with a side hustle, Tyler?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think there's a handful of reasons why to begin a side hustle and then why to continue it. I think a good reason to start a side hustle is to test out a career path or change. I think, especially as a millennial, I think sometimes it's hard to be just content when you know there's so many options out there to choose from. So I think a side gig or a side hustle can be a good way to kind of test out, like, well, what if I did something different with my life? What if I left my day job and did this? Like, I think it can be a good way to explore those. It can allow you to pursue passions like we talked about a minute ago, but coming back to Mark's warning, as soon as you start getting extrinsic rewards for that, it might change how you feel about it. I think that's really important to remember. Another good reason, and this is kind of what happened to me, to pursue side hustles is to start building up a client base. So I started doing consulting in college for marketing, and I don't necessarily have any of those same clients today that I did in college, but I've always kind of had a couple clients on the side throughout my career, even during my day job and stuff like that. And some of those are still clients today. So it can help give you a base when you are ready to transition. But yeah, I think those are a lot of good reasons. There's probably a lot of bad reasons too. Like I said, daydreaming about quitting your real job and doing something fun and romantic, like starting a bakery, or I don't know. I'm not hating on any of that stuff. I think it's great, but it can be really tempting to run away from something instead of running toward something. And I think that's something that I would caution against, because the reality doesn't always live up to how you romanticize it in your head.
Yeah, side hustle isn't, and even running a small business isn't always the stuff that you enjoy doing. In fact, a lot of it is stuff that you will not enjoy doing. And so you have to find that balance of what do you love versus what could you do without? And are you going to be happy with that balance in your side hustle if it turns into a full-time business? Because chances are with a full-time business, you're going to be spending even more time on the stuff that you don't like doing and a little bit more time on the stuff that you actually enjoy. And this is also true maybe in any career, regardless of whether you own your own business or if you're working for somebody else, that finding that balance is actually really critical for you to like feel happy about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and to really feel fulfilled by that. And having a small business isn't like a shortcut to that. It's just as hard as like going through those extra tough days in any job.
So Emily, how do you know what you should side hustle? How do you kind of start?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think of it as if there's something that you're passionate about, so you're thinking about it all the time, you want to continue learning about it, you're super excited about learning about it, you like to apply it in different ways, not just to you. So I'm working primarily as a service. If you're selling a product, then you have to be willing to fall in love with the people that you're serving as opposed to the product or service that you're providing. And so one of the ways that that I think about how to define whether you're ready to take your side hustle or your hobby into something different and full time is, are people actually going to pay you what you need in order to do that thing? And there's a lot of things that you can do to find that out. You can try it out for a long time as a side hustle before going full time. And you can start really with the people around you that you already know. I will caution you though, that you can't just stay there. Eventually, if you want this to be a full-time business and not a hobby, you really do need to talk about it with people who are outside of your immediate circle, and maybe even outside of your acquaintances. You have to get a lot better about figuring out where your ideal clients are, not just the people you want to serve, but the people who are looking for you. And it's a lot different from, I think, having a hobby that you sometimes make money off of, because in that case, you're not necessarily looking for those folks. So you have to have kind of a runway around who your ideal client is and also what your finances look like. So the way that I went about this was I took a really good look at my financial health, and it spent years getting where I felt like bills were manageable and I was able to save a lot more money and put that away towards having like several months of expenses built up, so that I would give myself a little bit of cushion going into from side hustle to full time. And along with that, finding, 5 or 6 clients that I could rely on for the next 6 months, paying me enough money that I don't actually need to use the runway, right? Or I don't need to use that cushion that I have. That cushion is for like those times that like maybe a client suddenly stops working with me, or maybe it's taking a little bit longer to get new clients than I had anticipated, right? And all of those kind of go into creating a situation where you can feel comfortable and safe doing something that's pretty risky, because it's risky taking your side hustle full time. If you're working full time and building your side hustle, or even working part time and building a side hustle, there's a little bit of comfort in having that money you can rely on coming in. And once that's gone, it's up to you to create your own safety net. And so having that can help you feel really confident about what you're doing and be even better positioned to do it well when you don't have that fear kind of gnawing at you. So that's where I would start. I bet Mark has ideas for what that next step might look like.
Sometimes it's just a leap. I know that those next steps that we do sometimes are just a quick idea that we had. Like we had a person who worked for us, and her husband was a truck driver, and he got laid off, or his company went out, or whatever that he worked for. So we went out and bought a big truck had a fifth wheel put on it, landed a contract with Coleman Trailers, and put him back on the road in like 5 days. So, and that's how we did. And we didn't make a lot, like $600 or $700 a month off of it after he was done, but he got his pay exactly where he left off, and he only missed a week's worth of work. So sometimes we just jump into the next step, or just without looking.
I think just to attack on a couple of thoughts too, we keep talking about next steps. I think it is so important as you're thinking about transitioning to, it's always going to be a leap of faith, but also define some of those next steps. Like I need X amount of clients before I'll consider actually quitting my day job and moving forward. I need X amount of revenue, or and then also there's some other smaller practical steps too, right? Like if I want to really do this side hustle thing, I probably need a website, so I probably should build that or have somebody do that. I probably need a name. I probably need to do something with lawyers to get my business started, like LLC versus sole proprietorship, all that kind of stuff. Like there's some bare minimums that if you're not even willing to do those, you probably don't want to spend the time and energy that it takes to turn your side hustle into a full-time gig. So I think it's important to kind of set those deadlines for yourself, and be able to walk away and say, you know what, it looks like this isn't something that I'm going to pursue or that I want to pursue. Like I think knowing yourself is so key here, because we're so good at lying to ourselves and saying either I can do this or I can't do this. And it's hard to break out of that and not just kind of have a daydream for the rest of our lives, right? Like you don't necessarily want to just kind of be saying, oh, I'm going to do this, and then never get it done. So setting up those next steps for how to move forward are really important, and then sticking to those and being accountable to those. And then Emily kind of hit on this too, knowing what your financial situation is like and what lifestyle you want is also a really good tool for being able to move forward with side hustle or moving into a full-time business as well. What do you need to live off of? I think that's an important thing to know.
Yeah, one of the things that I looked at is I want to retire, right? And I want to retire I'm 2 years into a 10-year plan. So in 8 years, I want to retire. Well, I know that to retire the way I want to, I need 7 streams of income that are going to be residual or passive. So my goal is to, and so far I've hit my metrics, but I mapped out every year for the next 8 more years on where I need to be in order to accomplish this goal. And who knows what may happen between now and then, but at least I'm trying, right? And I think that I like Tyler's the information he provided, that we need to have some metrics, very clear goals, and then just do it, right? Just work it.
Awesome. There's a lot of talk about goals. So what do you guys think about different educations or finding out other resources and tools to continue down this path of entrepreneurship? Is this something that people need to look at early on? Should we be continuing our education? What are your guys' thoughts?
Are you referring to like formal education, like
formal education? I apologize. I was going to throw that to you, Tyler. I didn't say your name. Formal education or certificates or trainings. How do we stay in the know, or what should people be educating themselves on to be an entrepreneur, whether that's a side hustle or a small business?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's some bare minimum business terms that you should know, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but some things that you should do to protect yourself legally and things like that. So there's definitely some things that you need to know bare minimum business wise to be successful, I think. But I am not a huge advocate for like formal continued education. And I think as far as certificates and things like that go, once you become responsible for your own paycheck, all of a sudden you have a very clear sense of what adds value to your life and where to invest your time wisely versus what doesn't add value. Is this going to help me actually get another paycheck next month? Or is it just something that's going to be, is it a place to spend my time? Those are two different things when you start working for yourself. And it becomes very clear. So I would say, yeah, there's some bare minimum business sense that you should probably learn. Besides that, unless you can tell me that your customer will pay you more because you got a certificate, or it will help you be better equipped to do what you do to serve clients, or whatever that means, it's hard to justify that, because again, like, you likely won't get paid for taking that training or whatever. So unless it definitely affects your ability to sell product or sell your service, or charge the rate that you need to charge, I don't know that it would be worth your time. It can be hard, and you'll know the difference for sure.
I definitely agree with that. I did take a lot of classes around marketing because it wasn't something that I felt super confident in. And so part of that tied to my previous role at Matchbox, where I did do some significant social media for a while. And learning that through my work made me realize how much more I needed to know if I was going to use that within my business. And now there's all kinds of platforms and different ways of using them that are vastly different from what my work experience is. So I actually did take some training to get better acquainted more quickly. I could have gone through and tried to figure it out on my own, but you have to balance time and money and what your time and energy looks like. So for me, it was easiest to go through some programming to get me up to speed real fast. And I found programming that was helpful and also affordable in a way that would help me move my business forward. But that's a pretty specific example. There isn't, I don't think, a whole lot of training that's required to start a business, especially if it's something that you've already been doing for a while as a side hustle. If you've already been trying this out first with friends and family and then expanding that over time, chances are you already know the things that you need to know to have a business. And whatever you don't know, it's even better just to reach out to people who might have good advice for you, as opposed to paying for a training where it's kind of passive and like information is coming at you. Being engaged in a conversation with somebody who really knows what they're talking about and can speak to your specific situation is always going to be a good experience, and is always going to give you good information.
Yeah, just to tag on to that really quick, I talked to a client last week who was just starting up their business, and they wanted to do all these marketing things, and she has marketers in her family, and she wanted to talk about brand guidelines and how to use the logo and where to use the horizontal logo versus the vertical logo and all these things. And I'm like, man, that's great. It's awesome that you know that, and that you took the time to learn that stuff. But I don't think that's where you should be spending your time right now. And it was a simple conversation that she could have with me where I could help reorient her perspective. And she's like, well, I learned this thing that is really important in marketing. And it's like, well, yeah, it is. But she had a journalist reach out to her for an article, and she hadn't responded yet because she was like, I don't know what our voice is. I've got to define our voice and brand guidelines and stuff. And I'm like, absolutely not. The most important thing for you to do next is get in that article and get your name out there. And yeah, sometimes learning something is great because it's systematic and it helps build, but also that progression isn't linear for every single person. So having somebody who's been in your shoes or knows kind of that progression and can kind of say, all right, skip step 2, go straight to step 4. You don't have time for step 3, something like that. That can be really helpful.
Yeah, I would like to add to that too. So my background, I have a BS, an MS, and an MA. And I remember after I finished my graduate degrees, I was like, I don't have any skills out of this. I learned a lot of stuff, but I didn't have any skills that came with that. So I think that, continuing education that is focused with your particular industry, like honing your skills or craft, right? That is very beneficial. Now, since then, I've been to other trainings like facilitator and different, agile, running agile meetings, different things like that. So I've learned skills, but the best way to learn them was to jump in and fail and learn, and maybe contact other business owners who are maybe not direct competitors, especially within your around your area, but business owners love to help business owners. And I think it's kind of an ego stroking thing, like, oh wow, somebody wants me to help them, so you just want to do it. But they're more than, you know, I've worked with hundreds of business owners, even in the greater Lafayette area, that are just very generous, nice, and want to be a help. So if you need help, don't spend the money on, I hate to say this because I do teach college also, but you don't have to spend the money. I should say that. You don't have to spend the money on formal education when you can get so much for free. Now, I have a friend, and I know I'm talking a long time. I have a friend who just made like 13 million bucks on a Kickstarter last month. And I remember his first Kickstarter was a few years before that, and he did about 4 million. And he was in a panel similar to this, and someone asked him, how did you learn to do this? And he said, I just watched YouTube videos. So you can learn just about anything you want relatively cheap. And I think that that's where I would go, because, and as far as business owners, less than 10% of all business owners have a business degree. So you don't need one to be a business owner.
Just to get a little bit more specific with that, with the mentorship and with the learning opportunities, where are some places in maybe Greater Lafayette or surrounding areas that people could get that education or there's those tools for free? Mark.
Well, I would just reach out to one of the business owners, local business owners. Just, you know, somebody that's doing something, you don't want to deal with a competitor. So not in your same area, but business is always the same, right? You need customers, you need a product, you need customers, and you need to get your name out there, and you need money. So any business owner that you know or see on either one of these videos or anything that Greater Lafayette Commerce has to offer, reach out to them. Most of them will respond to you and be happy to sit down with you. If you want something that's industry specific, look outside of your area, because there are people that are willing to help you, even with that would be considered competitors, as long as you're not in the same geographical area, right? That's where I would go. I would just contact a local business owner.
Yeah,
Or me.
A couple additional thoughts there. Obviously, Tippy Connect will help get you in touch with a lot of different people in a lot of different industries. And there's other organizations as well. Greater Lafayette Commerce has been awesome for us to meet other business owners and other local businesses that can help share some of that information. And then again, just other community leaders like the commerce. I think of Matchbox as being really helpful for us. They have an accelerator program that they run a couple times a year where you can kind of like launch your side hustle or a business idea, and they will help you kind of like guide you through what are those goals that you need to set to kind of get this thing off the ground. And we went through that a couple years ago, and it's pretty helpful. And they can connect you with all kinds of people in the community. So yeah, I would definitely say there's a lot of organizations. I saw Lori commented on Association of Women Owners. I've seen that posted a lot. There's things like that out there that can get you in touch with other people in your sphere, or maybe not competitors like Mark said, but people who can answer questions and help out.
And like, never underestimate, I know that we aren't getting to go out and network the way that we used to right now, and we're having to get pretty creative about that. For me, networking is one of the most important ways that I find new people to connect with and new potential clients. And not in a way that I'm like hunting for them, but in like a really organic, authentic way. You know, if I have something that somebody finds valuable, I want to share that. And one of the ways that I do that is through networking. And so finding more places where you can meet folks that might genuinely appreciate what you bring to the table is always a good move. And it can help you figure out how to talk better about what it is that you do. You know, especially if you're doing something kind of new and different, and there isn't like one word. You'll notice I use like 3 words in, when describing what I do. And that's because there isn't just one word that kind of sums it up. And I'm still even trying to hone in on how exactly do I talk about my business. And one of the best ways to do that is to kind of go out there and meet people and talk about it. And those folks can really help you better define what it is that you do and what your value is. So even if you're meeting with those business owners as a way to figure out, some advice on something in particular, it also helps to practice talking about what it is that you actually do in a way that gets some attention and is compelling, so that people want to know a little bit more. And it's an opportunity also for those business owners to ask you a lot of questions too. So definitely take advantage of that if you do reach out to them. This is one of the kindest, most compassionate, willing to give of their time communities. And while you're here, you should take advantage of that as much as possible. People in this community love to help each other. And it's part of the reason that I am here and why I've stayed here and decided to be in this community. I really love that aspect of it. And I can't imagine trying to build my business in a different place, because I've gotten a lot of help from a lot of different business owners over the past few years as I was building this side hustle.
One more thought on this topic. Sorry, I know it's been so long, but it kind of transitions into like mentoring and having like peers that are allowed to call you out on your crap. I mentioned earlier that I believe that all of us are really good at lying to ourselves and either saying that we're not capable of something, or that we are capable of something that maybe we're not. And I think one of the things that's been so valuable to me is having a group of peers who I meet with on a regular basis that are willing to tell me, hey, you're screwing that up, or hey, you could be doing this better, or hey, sometimes it's just, hey, you're doing awesome, keep it up. Like, you're doubting yourself, but you can get through this. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, whether it's your own network or leveraging something like Tippy Connect or Greater Lafayette Commerce. But I would definitely strongly encourage that. It's so important to have people to pull you up when you're down, or ground you when you're just going crazy. So yeah, just want to call that out.
And give you some accountability, right? Make sure that like you're staying true to what you say you're doing, and that you're doing it the way that you said you would. I mean, you have to like live those values too. You can't just say that you do it. You have to actually do it. And sometimes we can think that we are, and it really helps to have an accountability buddy to help you figure out if you're really staying true to what it is you say you're going to do, and doing it, right? It's way easier to get stuff done and be on top of it when you're telling other people you're going to do it, because you want to stay true to that promise that you made.
Also, the Indiana Small Business Development Center, Monty Henderson or Patrick Moeller, they're more than willing to sit down with anyone who's wanting to start a business. They'll help you develop your business plan. They'll help you develop a marketing plan. They'll help you doing market research. And all of this that they do for business owners is free. So that's another way. And both Monty and Patrick are great people to work with.
Awesome. Okay, so we are at the phase that we want to start a side hustle, and we know what it is, and we have a product that we are pretty happy with. How do we overcome that imposter syndrome and actually step into that role? I'm going to throw that to Tyler.
Yeah, I love this. This is such a good topic, imposter syndrome. So just a quick definition on that. It's that feeling that you get when you don't feel like you're good enough. You kind of feel like a fake and a fraud, like you're hustling people out of their money. Like it's not real to you. And I think I appreciate how you worded that question, Becca. Like, you're getting started, like you're just at that cusp, but then how do you overcome imposter syndrome? Well, the reality is that you might always feel that. I know for myself, imposter syndrome is something that I have to kind of face in the mirror every day, where I kind of feel like, hey, you're not good enough to be doing this. There's 100,000 people that are better at this than you are. You should quit and give up. And that is really hard. And I think it's helpful when I talk to, especially for creative professionals, it can be so hard. And so when I talk to other creative professionals, it's a lot of times a topic that I bring up because I want to hear how they've faced that and how they've dealt with it. And again, it's not something that you overcome and then you're done with forever. Sometimes it's something that you just can overcome for today, and you have to keep pushing forward, and it's really hard. But how to actually get over that? Again, I think it comes back to being surrounded by people who don't just tell you what you want to hear, but are willing to tell you how it is, and then also encourage you. I think that's so important, and it has been for me in my life. And then take courage in the fact that like 90% of people have imposter syndrome. And if you don't have imposter syndrome and you think you've made it and you think you are the best at what you do, that might be a worse place to be, honestly. It might be a time to take a slice of humble pie and see where your faults are, because you're blind to them right now. Right. So yeah, I think it's part owning it and being willing to move forward, knowing that, yeah, you're probably not the best at this, and you just can be the best that you can be. So that's what I would say. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I agree. The bad news is that it might be with you for a really, really long time. It might not ever completely go away. And so figuring out how to talk to yourself when you're in sort of like the deepest, darkest depths of that imposter syndrome can be really helpful too. I actually like personify my imposter syndrome when it's really rearing its head, and I kind of like thank it because, you know, it's trying to keep me safe. What it is it's a fear, and it's trying to keep me safe, but it's also killing my creativity and killing my ability to pursue my business well. And so I have to tell it to like, thank you for showing up today. I appreciate what you do for me, but I'm really going to need you to go sit in that corner quietly for now so I can focus because it can be really paralyzing. And what you don't want to do is get yourself into a place where you can't act because of that kind of paralysis. So instead of freaking out, I try to take a deep breath and just calmly talk to my imposter syndrome. I know it sounds weird, but it works for me. And then I also have to remind myself that I love tacos. And do you guys love tacos? I really love tacos. And what if my favorite taco place, so everybody has a favorite taco place. I'm not going to name mine, but I have a favorite taco place. And what if that owner said, you know what, there's already so many taco places in Lafayette. I just, you know, I don't think there's room for any more tacos. First of all, they would be wrong. They would be so wrong. And secondly, you know, not one of those places that makes tacos makes the exact same taco the exact same way. And even if you are entering a space that's kind of crowded, right? There's still plenty of room for tacos. There's still plenty of room for the way that you do the thing that you do. And what's important to realize is that as long as you're trying to bring the best of what you have to bring to the people that you're serving, that imposter syndrome doesn't have to sit at the table with you. It can actually go and sit in the corner quietly for a while.
You have such a civil relationship with your imposter syndrome. I love that. My conversations with myself are not that civil. They get a little heated.
Yeah, for sure. They can. There's generally more cursing involved, but trying to keep it, you know, PG over here.
Oh, sorry, Rebecca.
No, go ahead.
I try to tell people that as long as you have the imposter syndrome, you probably know what you're doing. Because the more we understand and learn something, the more we realize that we don't know anything about it because there's so much to the topic. The opposite of that is the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people who know nothing think that they're experts. And it's a real thing. So if you begin to think that you are an expert in something, you probably don't know anything about it, because the opposite, knowing a lot about it, you realize you don't know enough about it. And that's what causes that imposter effect also. So
Good answer. So throwing this back to Mark, on those things that we don't know, what are some ways that we can protect our side hustle? Who do we need to utilize?
we were kind of talking about this earlier a bit, I think. I believe that what you need to do any business owner, not just for side hustles, is to establish a partner-like relationship with your lawyer, your accountant, and your insurance provider. They should know your business, and you should be comfortable talking with them about your business. They're not an unnecessary expense, and they're not your enemy. They're there to help you. You're paying them to protect you and to help you. So that's my take on protecting yourself in this, is that I have these partners that I just say, I call them up and say, I need this, and then they do it. And that way I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Those three particularly, do not try to do your own legal stuff unless you're really detail oriented and good with accounting. It will make sense probably to at least have the CPA. They're worth their weight in gold. They will find you tax credits in places that you didn't know existed. In the end, it is 100% worth it. The other one that I would throw out there is me and my partner worked with a financial advisor recently, and it was kind of the same situation where in the long run, they saved us so much money. It's too detailed to get into right now. If you have any questions about it, feel free to shoot me an email. But with this becoming our full-time gig, speaking with not just a CPA or a tax person or an accountant, but actual financial advisor, they just gave us a simple thing that we needed to tweak, and it'll save us so much money in the long run. It was crazy. He told us this and it just blew our mind. So yeah, those three things particularly. And then as you scale, it kind of there's different like zones or whatever, if that makes sense. When you're starting off, again, I would say law, tax, and potentially insurance are three things. But then as you scale, those become other things, right? Like, again, your time is money when you're writing your own paycheck. And if there's admin work or something that's preventing you from being able to bill hours to clients, or from able to keeps you from producing your widget that you're trying to sell, you've got to find a way to outsource those. So we got a bookkeeper recently. There's a handful of little things like that we're trying to outsource. I think marketing is one that people a lot of times try to do internally, but it ends up sucking so much of their time that they should have paid somebody to do it anyways. So.
Part of that too is, sorry, don't mean to talk over you.
Go ahead.
Part of it too is figuring out a lot more about your time and how you're spending it. When you're getting bogged down because you're doing these repetitive processes, I'm thinking especially about marketing and how much we use social media in our marketing and what a time suck that can be. If you can think about how to set yourself up so that your success is kind of inevitable, you sort of like make it a habit, or you set up the process so that it makes it so much easier. It might take a lot of time on the front end, maybe more time than you want to spend doing it, but it's going to save you a lot of time and energy in the long run. And there are so many examples of that within any given business where you don't necessarily have to outsource. If you can, awesome. But if you can't, because you're still kind of new and getting started, there's a lot of ways that you can create processes that will support what you're doing in a lot better way. And all you really have to do is get creative and really honest with yourself about what it is you actually like doing, what it is you don't like doing, and those things that you don't like doing, figuring out how to make it easier and inevitable that you'll get that stuff off your plate. Because then you can spend more time doing the stuff that you enjoy and more time on the stuff that's actually moving your business forward and isn't just maybe stuck and bogged down by some of those detail-oriented things that we can all get bogged down by. It's really about creating those processes that support the work that you're trying to get done.
Great answers. Thank you, guys. So if there are still any questions, we're still taking questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box. So I'm going to throw this to Emily first, and then Tyler, you can definitely jump on. But when did you make the change? You have this great, side hustle. You've grown. You have a good client base. You have less of an imposter syndrome. Where's the tipping point from quitting your day job to being an entrepreneur?
I say that first and foremost, the tipping point is really about making money. And also a little bit about, do you really enjoy this as a full-time job? So we talked about this and touched on this a little bit earlier, but getting really clear about where you imagine yourself going and then assigning numbers. Get weirdly specific about what your expectations are. I mean, so specific. Now, part of this is visualization because it can help you understand what it is and what choices you need to be making. But part of it is actually a reality check. So when you think about how much money would I like to make doing this, and then work backwards, where's that money going to come from? How many clients do you need in order to get there? Is this a realistic number? What number would I be happy with leaving right now, right? Knowing that it could be less than what you're making at your full-time gig right now. And in all actuality, all businesses have growth and we all have dips. And being prepared for both of those scenarios can really help you understand whether or not it's time to go from side hustle to full-time. For me, I finally figured out what my financials looked like. I cut out a lot of stuff that I actually really love, but was willing to sacrifice in order to be able to make that leap. So I could build up what I needed to build up financially in order to feel safe and comfortable pursuing a creative side hustle as a full-time job. The other thing is having a really solid plan around what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and what the steps are to get there. So when I laid out the programming and products that I was creating for Change Agent, I got super specific about what those things were, super specific about who they were for, how much it would cost, how much I expected to make, how I would execute it, where it would go on my website, how I was going to market it. I did all of that work before I even took the jump. And you really have to, you know, hopefully you're doing that anyway as part of your side hustle. But when you go from side hustle to full-time, it takes on a whole new importance. And you really have to have a lot of clarity about where you are right now and where it is that you want to go and what your guidance is going to be when you're trying to get there. So I think of it as having a map and a compass. And I work with clients to build those things. Not that you need to, not that I'm trying to sell you, but like those are things that I think really help you figure out what it is that you're needing to do next, right? It creates the entire layout of what your year looks like. And then if you can always pivot. That's the great thing about being in charge, is that like you're in charge, you decide, but you have to decide something. And you have to take one thing and make it your thing until it's done. And I think so often we can get frustrated by that one thing not picking up fast enough that we drop it too soon. I think that in Lafayette, it takes somewhere between 5 and 10 years for a lot of things to really get rolling and to really feel like, yes, this is definitely anchored here in this community. This is a full-on business, right? It can take some time for those ideas to spread, especially if you're a new business just getting started. And so we kind of have to check in and have a reality check about what are our time frame expectations. And usually for me, I have to double those because I like to get stuff done in a very timely fashion, but a lot of times that's just not realistic once I start mapping out exactly all of the steps that I need to take to get there and how I'm going to get from idea to product to that product is in somebody's hands and they're paying me for it.
Yeah, I think Emily hit everything spot on. I really don't have much to add. The one thing that I would say is, as you are thinking about those next steps of whether it's defining your goals or expectations around money and things like that, that's going to take you time. And I've talked to a lot of people about side hustles and about transitions, and they always are a little hesitant about that step. And they see it and they're like, "Oof, that's an investment." Like, "Oh, I don't want to have to like put together a business plan," or "Oh, I don't want to have to do budgeting," or all that sounds like a drag. And that's not why I'm getting into my side hustle, right? But the reality is like some of those things are like bare minimum, like pay to play type of things that you need to do. And if you're not even willing to go through the tiny bit of pain that it takes to define those things that Emily was talking about, sorry, maybe you're not really ready to actually take that jump, because a full-time side hustle, while it sounds really romantic to work for yourself and work from home all the time, it is a lot of work. And again, if you're not willing to do some of the early small tasks that it takes, maybe you're not really ready to make that jump. So that's just the other thing that I would add.
And a lot of times those things are continual, like you have to do them over and over again. So it's not as easy as saying, well, got that business plan checked off. Well, probably in 5 years, things will look really different. You're going to need to revisit that and regroup and think differently about your business. And doing that continually actually helps you get even better at what it is that you're building, because it gets you more specific and it gets you thinking differently about how you can talk about what it is that you're doing, what are you even building? How are you going to get that into other people's hands? How have things changed from this year to last year? And what are those changes? Because as you build your business, you're going to find that you go through a lot of changes as an individual. And as you change, your business is going to change. And sometimes who you serve changes, and sometimes how you serve them changes. And you have to be really willing to do that work continually, because it is not really a sprint. It's a series of sprints, if anything, but more likely it's kind of like a marathon. And what I know about marathons, because I'm not a runner, but I know runners, and it's really hard. It's really freaking hard. And this kind of ties together with like having those people that can keep you accountable and having those folks that can help encourage you and keep you on track, right? Because when it's just you, it's just you. And sometimes that imposter syndrome can be a real jerk. And it can really cause us to just stop in our tracks. And we don't want to do that when we've made that leap from side hustle to full time. And experimenting with that and getting used to that and knowing that it's really more about the journey and a lot less about the destination is probably one of the best realizations you can have about your business and how you're running it, because it really is a marathon, and it really is like, yeah, just you have to be willing to do that hard work all the time, not just that one time. And getting clear on whether or not you're able to do that is going to help you with your business a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So right now I want to just say, if anyone is wanting to start their side hustles or make that change, Mark had touched on the Small Business Association with Monty and Patrick, I believe. So if you guys want more information on that, it'll be on the follow-up email. I do want to say a sincere thank you to our panelists for their time. This was an amazing educational event. And I loved hearing all of it. There are things that I didn't even know, and I know I've been talking to you guys for a week now. So I don't believe that we have any Q&As. I am going to launch a quick poll. If you guys in attendance could go ahead and take that. Our panelists as well, if you would like. Just a few reminders that our next webinar is on Leading Confidently with Anne Murray from the Alzheimer's Association. And then our top 10 under 40 nomination form is now open. That will also be in our follow-up email. But if you know a young professional that is living or working in the greater Lafayette area and deserving of an award for all that they do, don't hesitate to nominate them. Thank you again to our panelists and for everyone joining us. If you'd like to rewatch our webinar, it'll be on our website at www.topeconnect.com/events. Have a fantastic Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.